I want to ask you the same question you asked the A&C commissioners. Have you or someone you know personally been a victim of the following types of crime? Homicide, killed, gun violence, other violent crime, or none? Do you know someone personally?
Yes, I know people personally. I will share with you. I was an ANC commissioner in 4B09 in a neighborhood called Riggs Park. And one of the things we were very proud of was building a recreation center in Riggs Park. One of my neighbors and friends works in that recreation center, and a couple of weeks ago, somebody walked up to the doors of the recreation center and shot into it while our employees were there. Okay? And so that was very recent.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Mayor. You said people are hearing gunshots more and more. The chief talked about the pop, pop, pop going to the automatic sound of automatic weapons fire. What can you do about guns? You talked about the states they're coming from. Are your hands tied on this? Can you do anything against guns?
Well, if you're talking about more largely about guns coming in, that's a national discussion about what we're going to do as a country where we have more guns in the U.S. than we have people. We now have more concealed carry permits than I thought we would, legal guns in the district. And we are arresting people and confiscating guns. So the police are working very hard to take guns off of the streets. It is important, however, and that's why you hear me say time and time again, to stop gun crime at possession before one of those guns is used in a shooting or homicide. Chief, do you want anything about guns?
The other thing that I would add, we're doing everything we possibly can to include working very, very closely with the ATF. In fact, the Executive Assistant Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department is the former head of the Washington Field Office of ATF, so we have a very strong relationship with them. They are really part of the fabric of the Metropolitan Police Department with respect to our investigations into homicides, as well as some of our violent crimes when it comes to shootings. Our NIBIN Investigations Unit, they have worked very closely with MPD detectives to look at the science, look at this handgun that's connected to this shooting, and this shooting, and figuring out who's the person, the common denominator, and all of that, and pushing those cases forward. They've put over 60 cases before the federal court, supported by the U.S. Attorney's Office, for people who have been involved in multiple gun offenses in our city. So I think leveraging or really kind of highlighting the partnerships that we have with our federal partners have been very helpful in this fight. One of the things that's different, and I didn't talk about this, I was looking at some recent information. Historically, let's go back, last 5-6 years, you look at the time of the time that a handgun may have been purchased, be it a straw purchase or whatever, until the time that handgun would show up in a crime, it could be 8 years, 10 years, somewhere around there. Just recently, I was looking at numbers for last year. We saw firearms that were purchased, in some cases straw purchases. That gives us a trail to follow up on. But from the time that they were purchased to the time they showed up on a crime scene was less than a year. And that is a significant change in what we've seen in historical numbers. So the influx of firearms that are in our city, that are in cars, that are coming through our city, as the mayor mentioned, people who are carrying legal firearms, over 12,000 concealed carry permits in our city. I mean, that is a lot of firearms, and I can't stress that enough. We look at our victims of homicides and our victims of shootings. A lot of times, in cases, our victims are oftentimes armed with firearms. And it's really an honest assessment of the state of where we are right now.
Okay, I'll take a couple more.
And this is for the chief. In talking about the youth and the gun violence, which was talked about a lot today, one of the ANC says, she wished the room had been full of young people. Is that a solution that you think is viable and one that you all are considering as you look for solutions to this problem?
Talking and getting feedback directly from young people, yes, is certainly we want to have a variety of forums to do that. It was suggested, I guess, in one of the questions earlier that we only are having a meeting about crime for some political purpose, which, you know, that's kind of crazy in my view to suggest when we're getting the types of calls that we're getting. We in fact wouldn't have had any cameras in the room because that's how important I think it was to have a candid conversation with people so that they could feel in a safe place to say what's on their mind, what they're thinking, and what the government should be doing. Last week we met with or 2 weeks ago, concerned group of principals for high schools and secondary schools where the conversation was very candid. It came up in that meeting as well. Talk to the young people, ask the young people. So we want to put people, our young people, in a space to hear directly from them. But we also know we have a responsibility to work with all the experts and professionals, the ANC commissioners, the council members, to make sure that that we're engaging people and dealing with them where they are. Yeah. Yes, Tom.
My last question, Mayor. You've talked about youth crime and youth being victims of crime. Is there anything the chief or you could tell us about Corinne Blake and the investigation into that shooting?
Chief, do you have anything?
Yeah, Tom, thanks for the question. I know that obviously this is of great interest to the community as it is for our government, our police department, the family. What I will say is that we are making progress and getting closer to having a better understanding of what happened. I want to thank community members who have come forward with video that has been very helpful in this case. So again, as I have asked before, for the community's patience as we work through this process, it is a process, but that process is progressing.
Okay, last question.
One of the big concerns we heard throughout the morning was about juvenile offenses. In particular, almost 400 juveniles were arrested for violent crime in 2022. A third of them, that was their first entrance into the criminal justice system. What is driving that? What can be done to stop it?
Well, one thing that I wanted to highlight and just in pictures is the last several years and what I call the kind of disruption of our criminal justice system, our public safety system, but also our safety net. And so I don't think we can point to a single thing that has that's impacting kind of youth violence. But I would say that just the isolation and disconnection and disruption of COVID has separated a lot of young kids from systems that have kept them safe. And so that's why we're very, very focused on making sure our government is open, all of our partner organizations are open and in person, and working with young people. So thank you for being here. And as a person who was an ANC commissioner, I always appreciate when our commissioners who are volunteers take time out of their lives to get information so that they can disseminate that information to their constituents. Thank you very much.